Well, Alex, thank you for the opportunity to chat with you. It's a pretty exciting space, obviously the whole space of innovation. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Anywhere you turn these days, you hear about innovation. Every organization needs to innovate, and there's significant disruption coming in. And if we look at financial services, obviously the industry is not very immune to that. We're hearing a lot of very different competitors, new ideas, new technologies coming in. And it's very important, obviously, for every organization to stay competitive, but most importantly, stay relevant, right, to its customer. If I look at RBC, we're seeing a lot in the press, right, around the innovation that you guys are driving in the marketplace, and it seems like you guys have been on that journey for a few years now. Can you talk to us a little bit about that journey, where you came from, where it's going?
Absolutely, and my apologies. I'm seeing a lot of very friendly, familiar faces, so my apologies if I'm waving, but it's just lovely to see. I don't know about you, I've had a chance to catch a couple of this morning's sessions, and they've just been absolutely fantastic. So maybe a big round of applause if we could for some of our morning speakers. And I'll tell you this right now, like looking out at this room, like there's a lot of you, so it's definitely a little bit intimidating. So I do hope everybody knows who RBC is, because if you don't, we're probably not doing our job. The Royal Bank of Canada is 150 years old. We actually celebrated our 150th anniversary this June in Halifax. We operate in 36 countries. We've got about 86,000 employees. And to your point earlier, Anthony, we've been kind of many years into this innovation and transformation journey, right? And these are big words. Everybody throws innovation around, disruption around, et cetera. So maybe if we can, let's level set, right? We're going to talk a little bit today around trying to drive and foster innovation from a talent perspective, from a culture perspective, from a technology perspective, from a partnership and ecosystem perspective. But just again, for a little bit of context, we're talking about an organization of 86,000 plus people. Okay, so we're also a bank, right? So we're a very highly regulated, highly visible environment. So when we talk about innovation, we talk about innovation being doing something better. Okay, and at RBC, when we talk about innovation, it's two things. It's doing something better, and it's a wider innovation strategy. As part of our wide innovation strategy, we have certain elements of disruption. To disrupt is to fundamentally do something in a different way. They're very different things, okay? A lot of what you'll hear me talk about probably today is in some ways aspirational as well, because we might be a number of years into this journey, but it is a very, very early stage of this journey. So when you think about ours, we think successful innovation's got to start at the top. And I genuinely can say this, from Katie Taylor, the chair of RBC's board, to Dave Mackay, our president and CEO, to the vast majority of our senior leaders, our line managers, our branch network, people believe in the power of innovation and transformation. They believe in it because they're excited about it. They believe in it. They also understand that it is going to be an integral part of us and our DNA going forward, right? So it starts at the top there. We've been quite clear, in going out and speaking to investors at Investor Day, and we're going to talk a little bit more after, going and building new groups like RBC Ventures, going and launching things like the RBC Research Institute, Borealis AI, which is actually housed, our Toronto lab's actually housed here at Mars. But we've been quite public in going out and are trying to articulate that strategy. But again, it starts at the top, right? We're many years into it, and it's very much community-centric. We spend a lot of time talking about the community of practitioners.
That's great. And you mentioned 86,000 people, and obviously that's a pretty large group of folks that you're trying to kind of pivot as well, right, towards the innovation. 150 years of history as well, right? So culture, and I want to stay on the culture aspect a little bit. Culture at RBC is very, very important.
Ooh, hello.
Oh, there are a lot.
Hi, everyone. Oh, no.
So tell us a little bit more how you... Somebody's leaning against the lights, maybe.
Oh, that's okay, man.
That's okay. We can see them more. 150 years of culture, right? How do you do that, right? It starts from the top, like you said, but it takes a lot of engagement and a lot of facilitation and activation in terms of the whole organization. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Sometimes I feel I should tell people certain things, and sometimes I feel I shouldn't. So it's one of those things, contrary to maybe my delightful blazer, shirt, and jeans, I'm not a banker. And in fact, I've only been at RBC for a couple of years. I'm actually just celebrated 2 years. I've spent the vast majority of my career at technology startups, and most of it at eBay and PayPal. And very transparently, the vast majority of my time, I was focusing as a target was the incumbents, right? I very, very frankly, I moved here to Toronto about 4 years ago. And one of the first things that someone at the team drew up on a board were the Canadian banking ecosystem, right? They were the incumbents. Fast forward a little bit, it's like I'm now the shoe's on the other foot. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how we create and foster that culture. And it was tough even at somewhere like PayPal. And but I remember sitting at PayPal thinking, wow, PayPal, I remember us celebrating our 10th birthday. I remember celebrating our 15th birthday. And we're like, man, we're dealing with some legacy stuff here, people. We're 15 years old, right? Like literally, I remember sitting there just being like, oh man, these guys and girls don't get it, right? They weren't part of, you deal with organizations. I have 2 people on my team who have worked at RBC longer than I've been alive. Right, and I'm not that young, right? Yeah. But you talk about it, a lot of that's ingrained, right? A lot of it is. And we can talk about top talent, if I may, and I don't believe in top talent. I believe in the right talent. Okay, top talent's a label. What does top talent even mean, right? You want the best of this. If we talk about it, even from a developer perspective, so in our technology and operations group at RBC, we're about 8,000 to 10,000 people, and we spend about $3.2 billion a year on technology. You look at that, if we said, cool, we had 8,000 to 10,000 A grade, A plus, best top talent, we'd kill each other, right? That type of environment at that type of scale, everyone's got a role. So it's really about the right talent. Wow, these lights are getting, it gets very moody. So we spent a lot of time trying to do that. And a big part of what we've done more recently is I think most large organizations or most organizations in general talk about talent in 2 perspectives. How do you acquire and how do you retain? Right. We've taken it a couple of steps further. What are we doing to attract that talent? Are we doing the right things to efficiently, effectively acquire that talent? How do we engage that talent? And then retention is almost the last point in that, right? And so if you think about organizations like RBC Ventures, if you think about groups like Borealis, if you think about the innovation teams at RBC, that's very much focused as potential funnels to bring in a new or different type of talent, right? And to really try to foster an innovation culture, right? We talk about this quite a lot. Innovation at RBC, and please excuse a certain element of PR and propaganda that comes with this, so my apologies. Innovation at RBC really, for us, was about fostering, empowering, and resourcing a community of practitioners, okay, who we think are going to be mission critical in delivering our aspirational goal of being a world-leading, digitally enabled relationship bank. Okay, that's a big statement. There are a lot of words in there, but at its core, we talk about this. It's really about a community, right? How do you set them up? How do you empower them? How do they feel that? And again, dramatically, we can call them agents of change. We can call them transformers. All these types of things. But their number one role, whether you're in a technology part of the business or whether you're in the business part of the business, their number one goal is to ensure that we are innovating, to challenge the status quo. Respectfully, professionally, let's just be very clear, we're a large enterprise, but respectfully and professionally to challenge the status quo, to ensure that we are working on the right things, that we do have the right priorities, that we are being customer-centric, right? So that's really a big part of how we try to culture, drive that foster.
And do you feel the new ideas that are coming out in terms of innovation ideas are coming out from that group of individuals that you're really kind of creating the communities around, or is it really permeating across the organization?
Look, we talk about, there are a number of groups at RBC. So rewind 5 years ago, innovation groups didn't exist. We had I can't even remember, it was probably mobile. If you worked in mobile or digital, you were innovation. If you worked 10 years earlier to that, certainly in IT and things like that, it'd be like, cool, man, you're digital, oh, you're innovation, right? Innovation is literally just a word. Okay, fast forward another 5 years or 10 years, and I probably shouldn't say it if my boss is around, I don't think innovation groups at RBC will exist. Why? It's not because we'll have stopped innovating, it's because we will have just gone on to something new. And it probably will have a new, maybe we'll call, again, you maybe heard it here, maybe it's disruption groups. Right? Maybe I'll get to be the chief disruptor at RBC, okay? But again, the reality is it'll just change, it'll morph, it'll go on. When we think about, let's say, how we've been successfully doing it, some of it's internal, some of it's external, right? We've had a very, very large focus at RBC about trying to work with the ecosystem, okay? And again, that could be academia, so we're very proudly working with the University of Toronto and OnRamp, so just across the road here, as well as at Mars. Very strong relationships to University of Waterloo, all those areas. So it's working there to ensure that we've got the right talent, we've got the right mindset, we've got the right culture. A lot of it is working with fintechs, and again, fintech's another delightful buzzword. Everybody's a fintech, right? You know, someone the other day came out to me and they were selling, and again, I mean the most respectful way, they're effectively selling t-shirts online. Great, again, probably using Shopify, great company, PS. Selling t-shirts online, looking for investment. They're like, we're a fintech. And I'm like, cool, talk to me where the IP is, talk to me everything like that. They're like, no. So I'm like, you're an e-tailer. There's nothing wrong with that. And Canada's got a fantastic e-tail, but everybody, again, it's a buzzword. Everybody's attaching themselves to like fintechs. Yeah. But at RBC, we spend a lot of time trying to, again, very, very aspirationally, bring the best of the global fintech ecosystem to RBC. If there's a fantastic solution being built out of Denmark or Sweden in the Nordic region, we want to understand, we want to look at it, we want to test it, all those things. If there's great innovation that's being driven out of Sydney, we want to look at that. At the same time, and actually, Anthony, I was telling you this morning, we actually had a demo accelerator day from Halt in Montreal. RBC has, and again, I would say this very much about EY or any one of the Canadian banks, and I do say it with pride. I think Canadian large enterprise companies do want to work with Canadians. Mm-hmm. Can we do a better job of it? Absolutely. Are we doing as good a job as we should be doing? Probably not. But I will tell you this right now. Any Canadian startup, any Canadian fintech, any Canadian small business who's talking to probably one of the banks, one of the big consultancies, there is a big pride in being able to say we want to work and support with Canada. Because in a lot of ways, what's good for Canada is good for RBC. Yeah. Okay, so like selfishly, that's the case.
Yeah, and I feel there's now a healthy tension between the incumbents and the new startups. Where if I rewind 2-3 years ago, banks weren't even considering them very seriously. Fast forward 12 months, started looking at it as a competitive threat, and now it's a collaboration opportunity, right? And there's this tension between, for a fintech, do I compete with the bank or do I want to create a collaboration with them? Can you tell me a little bit about what would be the value proposition of, for someone like a fintech to work with RBC? What's in it for them?
Look, I think there's definitely a healthy tension, and in a good way, because that tension probably creates a better environment for the end customer, the end user. In a lot of ways, you, me, everybody in this room. I think there was a generation or a few years where everybody said it was all about attack, right? And then it was all about partner, right? The fintechs are going to attack the incumbents. Very transparently, I probably spread that narrative as much as possible when I was working for fintechs attacking incumbents. Now, again, the shoe's on the other foot. It's all about collaboration and partnership, right? So if you probably Google me in this exact venue a couple of years ago, I probably said the exact opposite of what I'm saying. I hope I didn't, but it's probably true. Look, there are different times. I think that there have been some absolutely fantastic examples in certain areas where fintech startups, et cetera, can do more than just compete. Yeah. And I would look at an organization like Wealthsimple in the robo-advisor. Again, very proud Canadian story. I think they've done an incredible job of going it alone. Simplistically going it alone, okay? I think, bless you, I think there are a lot of, sorry, my apologies. Maybe a little bit of nervousness here, as well as now the lights are back on.
I think we found the right mood now.
I don't know. Working with an organization like RBC gives you distribution, gives you brand, gives you trust, okay? If you're confident as a startup, as a fintech, that you don't need that distribution of 16 million customers operating in 36 countries, right? Cool, right? And just to be clear, some don't, right? If you're working in an area of the world that organizations like an RBC or any one of our peers are not hugely strong, I hope I didn't upset someone. And just again,
he doesn't need distribution.
Well, we don't again. But if you talk about those types of things, there are pros and cons to all of them. There are, and it's going to be give and take. So I always say to startups, to fintechs, etc., you got to be eyes wide open, right? Don't get me wrong. I definitely think that the pendulum has swung. Pendulum has swung. Okay. Where there definitely is more of a mutually beneficial agreement and relationship to be had between the disruptor and the incumbent.
Agreed.
Right? I don't think it has to be a dog-eat-dog, winner-take-all. It's not a zero-sum game. Certainly in financial services, it is not a zero-sum game. Okay? The pie is so large that everybody can have a piece of it. Again, I think we just got to really be careful that we don't lose focus of trying to be customer-centric.
Yeah.
Right? And we all as customers, our kind of needs, wants, our desires change. So I think there really is a much better environment right now, or a much more conducive environment for, again, fintechs and incumbents to work together. I think about distribution as being a big part of it. How do you simplistically get on board and distribute, even if it's an alpha or beta, right? We recently did a POC with a fintech, and we said, look, the reality is we're only going to be able to do kind of like an alpha beta, and it's going to go out to a tiny group. And you could literally see their faces go like, right? And we said, yeah, we're probably only going to send it out to about 18,000 users. And they were like, what? And we were like, yeah, look, we're not going to send it out to 4 million. And they were like, no, when you said tiny users, we thought maybe your team. And I'm like, no, we can do 18,000, we can do 10,000, we can do it quite easily, right? So there's distribution that goes out there.
Yeah.
There's brand, there's trust. Certainly in financial services, security, trust, et cetera, it's a big part of what we do, okay? I think RBC, at its core, we are a trust machine. We are a trust engine. We're 150 years old. We are trying to innovate. We're trying to disrupt ourselves. We're trying, and again, I'm going to continue to say this aspirationally, we're trying to be customer-centric, okay? We're trying to do those things. But one thing we never lose sight and focus on is trust and security.
Yeah. And so there's a number of different dimensions that you mentioned there around, the trust, the talent, the collaboration. Obviously, with the scale that you guys have, with your geographic footprint that you have, in a very, very highly regulatory environment, and many, many LOBs, right? How do you balance all that? There's ideas coming in from the inside, from the outside. You're looking for collaboration. How do you prioritize?
One of the genuinely something we spend far too much time thinking about, right? But we're a bank. How you prioritize innovation, it's super tough.
Yeah.
I would say from an RBC perspective, one of the things that we are most successful or set us up for a foundation of success was bringing almost the lines of business. So you simplistically think about it as business and non-business, bringing business and non-business together at one table and trying to create a lexicon, trying to create a glossary of terms, trying to create a same language that we can all talk about things was hugely important to us. So we did that. We set up an, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I still think it's kind of funny. We set up an Enterprise Innovation Council, okay? It's very impressive, it's very impressive. I get to co-chair it, so it's probably on my LinkedIn somewhere that I get to co-chair it. But a big part of that was bringing together technology, bringing together innovation, bringing together businesses to, quite frankly, discuss what the important problems or opportunities, I don't know why we always go to problems, what the important problem or opportunities are for a bank that we should be innovating on, okay? We also, in a lot of ways, we checked our egos on the door, and we realized in a lot of instances, we can't go it alone. Whether it be working with fintechs, whether it be working with academia, whether it be working with partners like EY, et cetera, right? Just very transparently, we look at it and we want to understand and utilize the best resources possible, okay? So we work with a number of groups who help us prioritize. And sometimes it's very tough to prioritize when you're on the inside. It's sometimes a little bit easier to get some outside perspective. But we spend a huge amount of time focused on three things: alignment, prioritization, business benefits and values, right? And if that comes across a little canned, it's because I say it to my team every single day, right? Again, we're an innovation group. When everything's going great, it's wonderful being an innovation group. There is such freedom and autonomy, et cetera, all these great things. When things like the economy are not looking so robust, I can assure you right now, being an innovation group is far from fun, right? It's explain to me why we think blockchain is going to be the new plumbing infrastructure of the bank, right? And explain to me why you're going to prioritize that over two-factor authentication. Like, it's a tough conversation to have, okay? So we spend a lot of time talking about alignment, working very clearly with business kind of stakeholders. And it doesn't matter if you're at a bank, doesn't matter if you're a startup. You got to understand who your customers are. Like, at the end of the day, who your customer is, who's making that decision. we spend a lot of time with our partners at the bank, internally and externally, on aligning that strategy to the decision makers. We then work with those decision makers to prioritize, okay? Sounds simplistic, but the reality is, are you prioritizing innovation or are you prioritizing their entire roadmap? They're two very different things. Yeah. If I've got to prioritize my entire wealth management roadmap, right, that I play a 0.1% role in that. I can, however, help them prioritize their innovation roadmap for wealth management. Very, very kind of different thing. And we talk about business benefits and values, right? Again, sounds very banky, et cetera. The reality is I say to my team, if you want to come in and pitch an idea to Anthony, to me, to Sabrina, to any one of the team, if you can't clearly articulate how this aligns to our strategy, right? How we can prioritize this, and I always joke about this, like in a tweet, tell me why the heck we're doing it, right? If someone came in the other day and they brought a PowerPoint presentation, and the PowerPoint presentation, right, was just all that was talking about was the business benefits and values. I'm like, the reality, if you need a deck of 12 pages to tell me the business benefits and values, we probably shouldn't be doing it. It probably shouldn't be a priority, and I doubt very much it aligns to our strategy. Simplistically, in a tweet, in whatever it is, 140 characters, explain to me why we're doing it, right? And we've just found that a very, very good way of challenging ourselves before we go out and start looking at other parts of the business.
That's great insight. Yeah, very good model. So if I look to the future, where do you think this is going? Not only for RBC as an organization, but as an industry. Everyone's doing innovation. Everybody's trying to figure out how to do it. We're trying to get rid of the innovation word maybe in 3-4 years. But what's the future like?
Look, I think we have to be, and again, we being as RBC, but I would always say to any one of my peers at any one of the other large enterprises, et cetera, there's nothing wrong with small I innovation, okay? People want to get excited about big capital I innovation, right? If you're an organization that services tens of millions of customers across multiple geographies, being able to show improvements or reductions in basis points or fractions of a percent is a very good thing, right? Again, we always talk about it. It's like, if you're a startup and you've got to show 100% month-on-month growth, which a lot of, that's cool. At an organization of our size, at 150 years old, if you can show basis point improvement or reduction over the course of the year, that's something you probably want to prioritize. Okay, so again, I think we get very excited as about big I innovation and about disruption. I don't know how ready we truly are for disruption to fundamentally do something in a different way, to completely and utterly replace something that may have existed for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We've got to get there. We've got to be comfortable, right? But I don't know how comfortable we are there. So I think getting comfortable with the status quo is, I think, a big part of it. I think if we look forward, I think it's going to be less about kind of like technology versus commercial, right? People always want to pitch kind of innovation as cool. It's either like IP and it's a new blockchain, it's all this type of thing, versus it's a new idea. It's just innovation. It's all the same thing, right? It's a new way, a better way of doing something. So getting out of our silos and saying it's got to be a technology thing, it's got to be a business thing. No, I think it's just innovation. But I think probably the biggest part that we're going to see, certainly kind of in the near term shakeup, is the value, right? I think there's a lot of organizations who have been talking about it, ourselves included, but I think especially as we look into 2020 and beyond, I think organizations like RBC are going to have to continue to articulate to our shareholders, to our customers, to our peers in the market, et cetera, the value of innovating. Why are we doing it? And like I said, for us at RBC, we genuinely think that innovation and transformation, right? And so transformation being more programmatic, innovation and transformation are going to be mission critical to us delivering to this narrative of being a world-leading digitally enabled relationship bank, right? So it really is going to be about value in that sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That's great. Well, listen, very, very interesting. Enjoyed it a lot. Hopefully you guys got a lot of insights to take back with you. And Alex, thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much.